Everyone back to Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the aftermath. This is the show that we do when the dust has settled from the instant post-match reaction from Newcastle United's last game, which happened to be a dreadful performance in a 3-1 defeat against Brentford in the Premier League, where Newcastle just cannot seem to get it done. The aftermath is very good because we normally calm down a little bit. The post-match is instant. You're very passionate. You're very angry. I was very angry yesterday, as a lot of content creators were. I've gone off, I've had to think about things, I've consumed some content from my favorite content creators, and I'm coming back with maybe a bit more of a balanced view to this situation, but it's still very concerning. So I'm going to get stuck right into this in a minute. Just before I do, smash that button, help get us to the next milestone, guys. We're within the 100 for getting to the 12K, so we're almost there. Keep smashing that button, keep supporting the channel, like the videos, hit the bells, all that kind of stuff. Comment for more, as you usually do. There's also a little bit of cheeky merch down there as well now. If you fancy a little bit of Evermore merchandise, that helps the channel grow too. Smash that button as well, guys. And yeah, I do have something to ask at the end of the video, which I will do. So, but Newcastle, more importantly, right now, let's get into this. What on earth is going wrong with Newcastle United? Are we at crisis point right now? 11 games into the season. We're 2 points off relegation, but we're also 6 points off the top 5, I think, at this particular moment. And can Eddie Howe turn this around, or is it time for him to go? There's loads of deep lying questions, soul-searching questions that we're all asking right now. And it's okay to ask them. You know, there's still happy clappers out there yelling at you for questioning whether the manager is still the right manager for the job, whether he's getting the best out of these players. And you absolutely have a right to do that. You have your right to believe the way you believe as a fan, even if you absolutely unwaveringly love Eddie Howe and support him and think he can turn this around. That's okay. Discourse is fine, certainly in football. You know, we live in a world now where discourse is supposed to be evil and you categorize and put away because you feel a different way about something than that person or that person does. Football is so polarizing and has a variety of opinions. It's like a box of chocolates in Forrest Gump's movie, and you never know what you're going to get with opinions, certainly when it comes to football and Newcastle United as well. But I'm going to try to be as balanced as I can with this. Do I think it's time for Eddie Howe to leave his job right now? Me personally, no. Right, I'm going to explain why. Now, he's had a real tumultuous summer, one of the worst summers I think any manager could have ever had. The Alexander Isak situation, although 11 games in, you can't really use that as an excuse anymore. But the Alexander Isak situation absolutely knocked Newcastle off its axis. There's no doubt about that at all. We almost looked like a pencil without a nib. You know, we were just the wooden shaft of the pencil with no end to write with. So we couldn't do anything. That's what losing Alexander Isak did to this football club. But I'm going to caveat that with the fact that the football club knew this was probably going to happen. And I don't think they maybe went as hard or as strong enough to get the replacement in who would have fit the style of this football team and allowed for less complete redevelopment of the way that they play and the way that the players play, you know, in order to match the centre forward strengths. I don't think they did enough of that. You know, we all know about the Hugo Ekitike thing and all that stuff. Now, the Liverpool thing, you know how I feel about Liverpool, certainly after the summer. I think they've been absolutely horrendous. The way they've acted as a football club as well, the way their supporters have acted has been vile. But something happened along the way where Newcastle and Liverpool just try to one-up each other rather than just being sensible here and saying, right, we've got a player who doesn't want to be here anymore. Liverpool want that player. We've got a player that we've identified to replace that player who has very similar traits to that player. Why don't we just say, Liverpool, I'll tell you what, you know, you guys step away. We'll have Hugo Ekitike and you guys can have Alexander Isak. And even if it was compromising on the fee, you know, that would have been more sensible for Newcastle United to have done that. Even if they'd lost maybe 10, 20 million on the fee, it probably would have been more sensible for them to do that. But both the football clubs, whether it be ego, whether it be finance, whatever it was, didn't want to do that. Liverpool then ended up taking it out and swinging it around because they've got a bigger one than us, and they took both the players. And Newcastle left themselves in a really bad situation. Now, I'm not going to slag off Nick Voltemade if anybody's thinking I'm going to do that in the comments. I'm not doing that at all. I think Nick Voltemade is an excellent footballer. He's creative. He's got brilliant attributes, but he's nowhere near the same player as Alexander Isak. And these players are struggling to come to terms with that. Now, I'm not going to let the players off the hook like some people. I think that's fucking horrendous. As professional footballers who have now played with this guy for 17 games, trained with him day in, day out, How you lot cannot figure out that this guy ain't the same as Alexander Isak and he's going to come deep rather than play on the shoulder and run in behind or pull out wide or whatever. How you lot cannot fucking figure that out as massively overpaid professional footballers who are on more money in a week than most of us motherfuckers will see in a lifetime is unforgivable for me. Unforgivable. Eddie Howe may protect his players. I'm not protecting them, and nor should you. These lots should be working this out. Only one of these players in Jacob Murphy seems to have understood how this guy plays. Slight little glimpses of Harvey Barnes. I'll get into the manager's problems as well in a minute and why that's on him. But those players should be professional enough to figure it out and say, this guy ain't Alexander Isak. I'm watching the game and I'm just a fucking bloke watching the game. And I can see them passing balls to him that are for Alexander Isak still after 17 games. You're talking about Brazilian internationals, Italian internationals, England internationals. You're like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not his game. He's dropped about 15 yards deep to get it, and bring it in for you lot to overlap him. And you're just standing looking at him, pinging a ball over the top that he's never going to have the pace to catch. He could have a fucking moped, he wouldn't catch it. You're like, what are you doing? That's the bit that frustrates me the most, because I see Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall looking all calm on the sideline. I'd be screaming at them not to hit that ball. Why are you hitting that ball? That's not his game. Get beyond him. I never see any of them do that. I saw more animation from Keith Andrew on the sideline because he spotted an issue and a weakness for Newcastle United that Eddie Howe either couldn't spot or refused to admit that it was there in the shape of Dan Burn, left back getting skinned. And that's another issue on the manager, which I'm coming to him in a second. But sticking with the situation, identity crisis is what we've called this, right? Newcastle United no longer have an identity. We used to be a high tempo, press inside. We were in your face from minute one. And we pressed and we pressed and we pressed, and we made them make mistakes, and we got the first goal, and we didn't stop there. We pressed further. We wanted the second goal. We wanted the third goal, right? This Newcastle United, I don't know who it is, and I've seen some people coming for me in the comments, right? You clearly don't understand what I'm talking about. Since we brought in this performance guy, right, in James Bunce to prevent injuries, and he did prevent injuries in many ways. So Alexander Isak, he played a lot of football and he scored a lot of goals, right? But since we brought in this performance manager, that intensity is gone. That intensity is no longer there, right? So we don't press teams. We don't hurry them. We don't make them lose the ball. And the minute we go a goal up, it's almost like you flick your phone in battery saving mode. Newcastle go in battery saving mode, right? And we're not good enough to just sit and absorb pressure like that from Premier League teams. And I'm not even talking about good Premier League teams. I'm just talking about decent Premier League teams. We crumble. We make mistakes. And largely, the reason we make mistakes is because Eddie Howe is picking the same lads week in, week out, and most of them are in their 30s and they're struggling. Even that slight little bit of sharpness, because you've played Wednesday, you maybe had a recovery day or whatever, a little bit of light training, and you're straight back into a game. And I know they're athletes and all that, and they're fitter than I'll probably ever be, right? But that's going to catch up on those players. And when you've got the players to rotate, certainly in midfield, and you're not doing it, that's on you, Eddie Howe. That's on the manager. When Sandro Tonali delivers his worst performance in a Newcastle shirt and Bruno Guimaraes has passed to more Brentford players than his own players, and you've got both Lewis Miley and Jacob Ramsey sitting on the bench, and Joe Linton, yes, he went off injured, but offers nothing, and he offers nothing in games, that is a major problem. You're not rotating the squad. You've got a really good young player in Lewis Miley who's come in and done really good things, withering on the vine, to the point where a lot of fans are writing this kid off thinking he's not good enough because you're not giving him the minutes. So they're thinking he's not good enough. And he is a good player. He's a very good player. He's creative. He's calm with the ball. When we're under pressure, having a Lewis Miley and a Sandro Tonali and a Bruno Guimaraes who are all equally very good at looking after the ball, we could soak up loads of pressure, little triangular passes, run the other team ragged, pick spaces, and then hit the wingers. That's what we could do, but he doesn't do it. He plays the same three over and over again, living on past glories of, when we beat Liverpool and City and Arsenal and all that last season. Those players aren't delivering those performances anymore. They're not. And that's a major issue. They're doing it in the Champions League because the Champions League is lesser quality than the Premier League. The teams that we've beaten in the Champions League, let's get it right. You'd expect us to beat them. And that's no disrespect to those teams. They're massive football clubs with great histories and heritages, right? But their leagues are not as competitive as the Premier League, right? You'd expect us to beat Benfica. You'd expect us to beat Athletic Club with 6 of their star players missing. You'd expect us to beat USG away, who are the minnows of the Champions League. You'd expect us to beat Bradford City You know, you'd expect us to beat Wolves, which we only narrowly did, and they got 2 points. You'd expect us to beat Fulham, and we narrowly did. We weren't good in both of those Premier League games. Newcastle haven't delivered good enough performances this season, full stop. Full stop. They haven't delivered good enough performances. And that has to go back to the way the manager is setting up the team. He's rigidly locked into his 4-3-3, and he will not change. Dan Burn at left back, I'll get into this right now. The Dan Burn at left back thing, you know, is only acceptable when there is no option at left back. It's only acceptable then. When Lewis Hall is back and he's fit enough to come on and give you half a game of football, he has to start games. If Lewis Hall starts that game on Sunday, none of that shit plays out for me. None of that shit plays out at all. In the minutes Lewis Hall was on the pitch, what was it, 23 minutes? After Bernard already got sent off, which I'll come at that in a second, because that is really worrying from Eddie Howe. In the 23 minutes Lewis Hall was on the pitch, he forced Atara back to defend because Lewis Hall can attack, Dan Burn cannot. When he gets up there, he just looks uncomfortable. He looks like he doesn't belong there. And listen, I love Dan Burn as a bloke. He's a lovely bloke. He's Newcastle through and through. Everything that guy's done in his career. I was watching a game of the day and someone said it'll be a great book one day. It really will be a great book. Dan Burn has lived an unbelievable life as a footballer, right from the bottom to the top, and he deserves all the respect and adulation that he gets. He will forever be a legend of this football club. Never won for a pint anywhere. Come back and do talkings and be on the TV for years to come. We all love Dan Burn, but he's not a left back, and he shouldn't be in that starting 11 if Lewis Hall is anywhere near fit enough to give you 45 minutes to an hour. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And Eddie Howe should explain why it's happening. If Lewis Hall can't give you 45 minutes to an hour, come out and say it. Now, I did criticise the journalists in the post-match for not asking difficult enough questions. I watched the Geordie journals, who they were one of the guys I said do ask the tough questions, as does Craig Cole, and they both asked difficult questions of Eddie Howe as to why he did that. And his answer back was mental. He said he kept Dan Burn on for his height because Brentford were a threat from long throws and stuff like that, because Joe Linton had went off. Now, this is a big issue for me. Eddie Howe is focusing more on physicality than technicality in terms of technical ability in a football team. Brentford were not a threat from the long throw at that particular moment. They were a threat from pace out wide on the left-hand side that Dan Burn was not fit to deal with. And all of that noise can fuck right off, because you can't talk about a height advantage, Eddie Howe, when your left back is getting skinned over and over again. He's lucky that he didn't give a fucking penalty away a second ago. He deserved to give a penalty away and get a red card then. That was your warning shot. That was a serious warning shot, right? And there's like a level crossing coming down on a train, and you just walked across, Eddie, bang, hit with it. That's what happened there, because we knew what was coming. Everybody knew what was coming. You should have had him off then and got Lewis Hall on. And I don't think we lose that game potentially. We may get a really undeserved draw at the end of that game, because Lewis Hall would have offered more balance. He would have nullified the threat of Atara. But you didn't do that. You put your trust in Dan Burn because he's one of your favourite players and you love him to bits, and he's a lovely lad, there's no doubt about it, but it was the wrong decision, and that's on you, Eddie Howe. Also, the issue with Eddie Howe for me right now, and again, listen, I'll go back to the start, I'm not saying get rid of him, right? Can he turn it around? Yeah, he probably can. You know, we're 6 points off the top 5 and we're 2 points off relegation. We're 11 games in, but this has to be the reset moment. Some of the things I'm about to say, Eddie Howe needs to start listening to, and he has to take on board, and he has to implement it, because if he doesn't, he could be out of the job by Christmas. And that's what I'm going to say about this. The issue we have right now, the 4-3-3 with this group of players now does not work. It's not getting the best out of any player whatsoever. Nick Voltemada is not Alexander Isak. That ain't happening, right? Does it mean Nick Voltemada is a bad player? No, but he's not Alexander Isak. He's dropping too deep and nobody's going past him, right? So there's two problems there. Number one, can you get Nick Voltemada to stay up, right? There's a problem that you need to sort because you're the manager. Number two, can you get players beyond Nick Voltemada? Again, you need to sort that out. You're the manager. 17 games with this kid and these lot still aren't running past him. Nobody from midfield's running past him, right? That's a major problem as well. So just as an idea, I'm just an armchair supporter, right? I'm a fucking armchair manager sitting here talking about Newcastle United. I'm not a professional. I've got no years experience. Eddie Howe knows way more about football than I do, right? But it's fucking abundantly clear. Start from the goalkeeper right up the pitch, right? Nick Pope, Kicking is dreadful. Sunday league standard. He can't catch up on more. He's punching him. And he's not even punching him with strength. He's punching him weak as piss. And it's dropping to other players like it did on Sunday, causing problems, right? Nick Pope is a problem. Now he's injured. He's out with concussion. The hand has been forced by Eddie Howe to bring Aaron Ramsdale in. This is Aaron Ramsdale's chance to take that spot, and he should take that spot because he's probably a better all-around goalkeeper than Nick Pope. Nick Pope's been great so far this season, but the flaws are starting to creep back in, certainly over the last few weeks, and it's a big, big concern. So there's a change right there. The back four. We're missing Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall massively. Lewis Hall's back now, and he's still on the bench because you have to get Dan Burn into your team somewhere, right? You don't have to get Dan Burn into your team. That is not what you've got to do. Elite managers make tough calls and drop players that they sometimes have massive affections for and have done great things for the football club. As I said on the post-match analysis, the thing that made Alex Ferguson an elite manager was you'd go to players in training and say, you're not playing the weekend, Galatasaray is your game, I need you ready for that. And they would leave that conversation still feeling good that he needed them for such a big Champions League game. You need to do that, Eddie Howe. That's how you need to manage Dan Burn and Fabian Schär and Kieran Trippier and those players who are in their 30s. A 33-year-old defender should not expect to be starting Premier League games week in, week out. The Premier League is fast, it's intense. You know, even average players are dripping with pace and threat from out wide or centrally. And you cannot just play a guy because you trust him or you like him or he's tall. That's the most nonsensical bullshit I've ever heard in my life. He was not the right decision for that game to start it, and he sure as shit wasn't the right decision to stay on the pitch. And this isn't about me digging out Dan Burn. I don't blame Dan Burn for this. I blame Eddie Howe for this. He's let him down as a manager. He did front up in the post-match press conference. He did front up and say this was his fault. But it's an equal problem because the players are also letting down the manager. If they like this manager and they love him and they trust him and all that stuff, they need to start putting it in for him. They need to start performing. No point turning up the Champions League if you can't turn up in the fucking Premier League, lads. That's a simple cardinal sin that you lot are all guilty of. Where's the leadership? Where's the player stand up, taking on a chest saying, come on, you know, we can sort this out. Let's deal with it. I was listening to Liam from the Geordie Journos and he said he went into the mixer, fair play to him. And the only two players that stopped and said something was Kieran Trippier, who's well in his 30s, who probably should be playing less games than he is, so because Tino's injured, that he's not there. And Jamal Lascelles is not even playing. You know, they're the only two players who fronted up and said that they're going to get this, put this right. All the star players walked away. What does that tell you about the mentality right now at the club? Weak. Cowardice. They're not coming up fronting up and saying what the problem is and what's going on. I love Bruno to death, but Instagram posts, Bruno, ain't good enough. Actions speak louder than words. But the issue we have with the team right now, as I said, going back to it, the tactics that Eddie Howe is implementing week in, week out aren't working. Has he been found out? Maybe. Is he completely tactically inflexible? I would say he is right now. He's not tactically flexible. He has no plan B. He's gone back to just, this is my cards, this is what I've laid out, and that's it, and I ain't changing. And that's a major problem, right? Even just a slight tweak of that team. I was thinking about this before I came on, right? You drop to almost a 4-2-3-1 formation with the current back four that you have, right? Kieran Trippier at right back, Malik Chow, who was the only player who looked like he was worth a light in that game. Sven Botman, if he's not playing well, drop him, put Dan Burn left centre half. Botman was awful against Brentford, right? If Burn wasn't suspended, I'd be tempted to do that. Lewis Hall back in at left back, right? Then Gimmer Rice and Tonali as a midfield too. Joe Litton's out of this side. Joe Litton offers this side nothing with the ball, and he hasn't done for a long period of time. You can't shoehorn Dan Burn into left back because you want him in the side because he's big, or Joe Litton because he's big, and he keeps losing the ball and put you under pressure. You need to play your tactically, right players for the game to get the best out of the team. And that's where you need to drop Joe Linton. You need to take Dan Burn out the side, right? So you got Tonali and Gimmer Rice in a double pivot midfield. And then in front of them, you got Murphy, Harvey Barnes and Gordon when he's fit, and then Nick Voltemade. So if Nick Voltemade does drop deep, Gordon can go beyond him, or Gordon and Barnes can switch, and Gordon goes beyond him. You need to have that kind of tactical flexibility, but the players also need to almost in-game do that shape, create that shape. But Eddie Howe's so meticulous and strict and stubborn as fuck, he's probably telling them not to break formation. And that's why we're losing games like that. I feel sorry for Nick Voltemada, right? All this, and people now are already here already. They're building up the return of Wissa like he's the fucking prodigal son because he's got pace and can run in behind. We don't know how fucked he is after this knee injury. He's in his 30s now. We massively overpaid for this player because we were in a desperate situation because of the Alexander Isak scenario. And that's a real concern for me that Newcastle even put themselves in that situation. Why couldn't we sell this project to these players over the summer? That's another issue that needs to be looked at. The back of house was a mess. The upstairs was a mess. The PIF completely switched off behind the wheel. So these players were coming to us, for conversations and probably were going, well, I don't know what's going on here. Man U, Sesko's a prime example. I know he's not been a great signing for them, but Man U flew him out with an entourage of like 8 or 9 Man United people to convince him to sign for them. We had one lad on a fucking Teams call, which was Andy Howe. So that wasn't good enough either. So Newcastle really shit the bed in the summer. Signing the Langer when players like Kudus was available and Buemo, and Semenyo, real good quality right wingers who would have given us goals and assists. Alanga's give us nothing. He's a dud. I'm calling it now, guys. 11 games in. Alanga not good enough. Bad signing. I think we're going to regret that one. The kid that we let go for fucking 30 million that was spent 7 million on signing Yankuba Mintas, twice the player. So that's a big issue for the football club as well. That's another podcast for the day. I'll be here all fucking day. I've got to get out and do my day's work. But this situation is really concerning. Can Eddie Howe turn it around? I believe that he can, but he has to have big balls and make the right calls, as I said weeks ago, and he's not doing it. Fuck your mates, fuck your favourites, make the right decision for the side. You need to get players out of this team who are no longer good enough for the games ahead. There's certain games where they are good enough, certain games where Joe Linton's physicality and strength massively assist the football club, and he has to be in the team. Certain games where Dan Burns' height and strength is a massive asset and has to be in the starting 11, and that's fine to rotate those players. They're big boys. They should understand it's a squad game. They're not going to play week in, week out. And there's other games where Lewis Miley's the right choice, Jacob Ramsey's the right choice, Livermore and Hall are the right choice, Trippier's the right choice. That's how you earn your pay packet anyhow. You can't just go, oh, well, they won the last game, so they can play the next game. Oh, they lost the last game, but they'll play the next game. And that's what worries me. We've got an international break now. We've got 2 weeks off, right? There's a lot of time to digest this shit, analyze it, figure out what's going wrong. And fucking hell, ring me, ring the content creators. We'll tell you how what's going wrong. Do a fucking Teams call with us, and we'll tell you what we're seeing, because we can see things that you're not seeing by the looks of it, right? Which is mental. I know some of them probably give me shit in the comments. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. You pull a stick out your ass, but how many football teams do you manage? These fucking happy clapper dicks. But the situation is, everybody can see what the problem is with this football club right now. They don't have an identity. There's a major issue. Use this 2-week window as a chance to develop. But the issue is, again, with international breaks, all of his players are pretty much gone. He hasn't got the players to sit and work with them and go through this shit. So that's the problem at national breaks as well. We're 11 games into the Premier League. And I hate to say it, right? It's great we're doing well in the Champions League, but we could almost do with not qualifying in the Champions League to get the Premier League back on track, because I think the Champions League and the Premier League for us right now, we're struggling to balance it, and that sounds mad. I know it brings revenue and all that stuff, right? But at the minute, we are not going to get in the Champions League again next season unless we win the thing, which we're not going to do. But we are closer to the relegation zone than we are to the top 5. And I don't care how much you love to happy clap, that surely concerns you, because it concerns me. Can Eddie Howe turn this around? I do think he can. I think he can turn it around. Last season, he had a similar problem when he eventually ceded ground and put Sandro Tonali in the 6th role, and he managed to get a hold of Alexander Isak behind the scene and get him out of his funk and get him back into things. Neither one of those two things are an option this season. You're talking about 2 world-class players there, one in the 6 and one up front. They're not there anymore. We don't have that situation. So what he has to do now is he has to look and say, right, what's grown stale? What's not working? What am I not getting the impact from? Where do I need to freshen up? Where do I need to tweak? That's what he has to do with his squad. This still has a squad of good players. These are good players. They haven't become bad players overnight. Nick Voltemada is a very good player, but he plays very, very differently. The onus has to be on the other teammates to get themselves around that player and get the best out of them. And for me, I've been saying this for weeks, right? You either put a double pivot midfield in of Guimaraes and Tonali and let Ramsey get further up beyond the striker or in and around the striker, right? Or you do what I've just suggested before with Harvey Barnes, right? That's what you have to do. If Bruno has to sit next to Tonali and play in that double pivot, then so be it. He's able to do that. He's capable of doing that. You either drop Miley and Tonali there or Bruno and Tonali there. And if you're going to stick to 3 midfield, that's what you have to do. Joe Linton should not be in this side for the majority of the games that we play anymore. I'm sorry, he shouldn't. I know he's Brazilian, he costs 40 million and all that stuff. He's everybody's favourite player. He's been unbelievable. His character arc at this football club is sensational. You can make a movie from it, but he's no longer the right choice in the side. Dan Burn left back is catastrophic. It shouldn't happen ever again. Ever again. Simple as that. Ever again, I'm sorry. And people need to take their blinkers off with Dan Burn. Take your black and white blinkers off. Forget he's a lovely lad and he's from Blythe and all that stuff. Just look at his ability in the position that he's playing. And he's not the best left back at the club. The best left back at the club is fit. Get him in. He's not the best left-sided centre-half at the club, so he ain't getting ahead of him unless he's having a mare, which he did do against Brentford, right? That's big decisions that Eddie Howe has to start making. His loyalty to these players, 4 years on, some of them have aged 4 years. The 4 years slower, the 4 years less impactful as a player. They're into the 30s now. You lose a lot of impact as a player. None of these guys are Paolo Maldini or Cafu or anybody, by the way. They're good players, but they ain't that level. Or even Ryan Giggs when he was in his 40s and still was a good player. These lot are losing a lot of the stuff that they used to have. Eddie Howe's got to make big decisions here and make the right calls. We've got massive games coming up. We're back against City. If he starts the same lineup against City that played against Brentford and we get tanked, then a lot of fans will massively turn on him. We need to see changes, either a tactical tweak, formation tweak, players tweak. We need to see some fresh blood coming in against Manchester City. We've got massive games, and even we still might lose the game, but if we have a better performance, then we can at least take some solace from it. But we've got City coming up. We've got tough Champions League games. I'm not even asked about them. I'm more asked to the Premier League. But Everton's a tough game. Spurs at home, you'd like to think we could win it, but Spurs could be brilliant at times and cost us the game as well. Manchester United away is a tough one. The derby's coming up. At the minute, there's no way we beat Sunderland playing like this. Sunderland will beat us comfortably because they've got belief, they've got passion, they've got intensity. I watched them against Arsenal. They never give up. And Sunderland will beat us hands down if we rock up to Sunderland and play like we've been playing. So major soul-searching decisions are needed from the manager. Major calls are needed from the starting 11. He has to make the changes. He has to tweak things. Or I think he will lose his job and he'll lose it by Christmas if he doesn't sort this out. But let us know in the comments below what you guys think. Where are you with Eddie Howe? Do you think this is all on him or is it on the players? Do you think he can turn it around or do you think it's time for a change? Now you've calmed down a little bit and you slept on it. Let us know in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. Ring the bell for any videos. Comment. A little bit of merch down there if you fancy a bit of that. And also, just towards the end, if anybody listening or watching is interested in sponsoring the Evermore YouTube channel, then click on the details below and drop us an email. Let us know if you're interested in that, and we would happily talk to you about potentially sponsoring the channel. We did have one a while ago. We're looking to have another one now. So just start throwing it in, guys. Let us know what you think. I'm just going to check our email address there, actually, as well. What is our email address? It's been that long since I've asked for a sponsor. Where are we? Yeah, so it's evermorenufc@gmail.com. There you go. I feel like the Geordie Journo saying stuff like that. But there you go. So that's where we are. So if you're interested in sponsoring us, drop us a line and either me or Mark will come back. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a cracking day. Let's breathe this international break. We'll be back with some content through it. Talk a little bit about maybe a bit more about this, a bit more about other stuff as well. Maybe a little bit of fun, light, jovial stuff as well in the break because it is a bit miserable at the moment. But massive decisions needed from the manager. Big performances from the players. It's time to front up, lads. It's time to get the chests out. It's time to sort this shit out in the Premier League. But thanks for watching, everybody. Have a belter, and we'll see you later. Cheers.
Heroes celebrate. They have done it.